Good evening, guys. It's Sarah, your MCVP OD. I'm very sorry today that this TL Academy is starting very late and all the technical difficulties. I hope if you're watching this, anyway, I do think some of this information is going to be really helpful for you, and I'm looking forward to reviewing all this stuff. So what are we going over today? So we are reviewing the closing part of our team standards. So you guys already reviewed the building, team creation, team plan, individual plan, and you guys have reviewed the performing part, which is a lot. So evaluating results, tracking performance, and empowering our support system. So next up, we're going to look into closing. One thing really fast, you might be asking yourself, why do we even need to worry about closing right now? We only just started our terms. We're worried about building, and of course we want to perform, but we don't really care about closing. So the thing I like to remind you and everyone all the time is backwards planning. So if you know where you want to end up with your team leader experience, it's really important to already now be aware of what does your closing have, what should it look like, what are you expecting, what are you hoping, what are you planning for your closing, because that will help you improve kind of your building and your performing experience, right? Because as a team leader, you will already be aware of what you want to cover in closing. Therefore, you will know better what you should be trying to support your team with during the building and performing part. So this is why, learning about closing our team experience might be very helpful for you today, even though most of you are just starting your terms. So first off, in closing, we're going to start with team standard number 7 with the team debrief. So what is a team debrief? As a team leader, you need to make sure that your team closes the experience, right? Taking all the performance they've delivered, so they are aware of what they've actually done, what they've achieved, what they've learned, and most importantly, like what they've developed as being a part of your team. So this is really important. It's a final review of everything that you've done, and it's not only important for your team, it's also important for the new team that will be coming in, right? So in ISEC, we have 1-year terms, so there's always a term over. And a lot of things, unfortunately, get lost when one team leaves and the new one comes in. So if we have a really good closing, this means that we actually will have a good transition. Also, we're going to be talking about transition later. And we make sure that not, a lot of information gets lost. So when should you be having your team debrief? Last 2 weeks of your term. So this is really important that you do it, obviously, at the end, but not too late. Like, you don't want to run out of time to do this. And you'll be hosting the team debrief in a team meeting with your team. So there's 2 parts to the team debrief. The first one is reporting results, and the second one is final feedback. So let's look into reporting results. So what does it mean to have a results report? So it's very important, obviously. This whole entire time with your team, you guys have been working towards a goal, whatever that goal might be for your area, for your focus. It's something that you have been focusing on for the whole year. So it's really, really important that you gather all of the final results that you guys have had in terms of performance, because your team needs to know, okay, did we actually achieve the results? Did we not achieve them? But how far did we achieve them? What did we do good? What did we maybe not do so well? So it's very important for your team to feel like they've had the complete experience. If they don't know what all their hard work actually resulted in, it'll be very demotivating for them and really actually kind of sad. So be sure that after you gather all the results, you present them to the team so that everyone is aware of everything. And very importantly, like, there may have been some things that went wrong. There may have been some goals that weren't quite achieved, and that means that you guys, of course, learned something. So there were challenges and there were learnings. So make sure that you gather the main learnings that you guys had. this is especially important because for the incoming team, you will want to share those learnings, because this will allow the new incoming team to already be aware of these challenges so that they can prepare better and also maybe learn from some of your mistakes and not make them in the first place. This is how we can kind of establish really like growing leadership, having even bigger areas, more complex teams and stuff like that. So all in all, basically have a detailed report on achievements, something that also, you have in slides or something that you can save in a PDF and send to everyone, because this is obviously also something that would be nice for, maybe other people to read. And report on all of your achievements, the things that you didn't achieve, the reasons maybe you didn't achieve the things that you wanted to achieve. So this is really, really important, as I was saying, for making sure that the next team has all the knowledge they can get from you guys. So what is final feedback? This is the second part of the team debrief. So the feedback should be focused basically on kind of the personal stuff. So how were the people in your team experiencing the team, and how did they grow within that professional experience? So this isn't the same thing as the PDP. We're not wondering about, the development that they had alongside doing ISEC. This is actually the development they had within working in ISEC. So maybe they, were improving in presenting information in front of a big crowd, or preparing, PowerPoint slides, or whatever the point is. They need feedback on, how they had their team experiences, and for any next steps that they might have. So these results are very important, because after the team debrief, you're going to be going into an individual debrief. So that's something that you're going to be doing in a one-on-one. So if you already have content on this, right, in terms of how was the team doing in general, did we get along? Did we, really follow through with team standards? Did we do good tracking? What are things that can be improved on, stuff like that, maybe have more team days or something like that. These are things that is important for you to know now, because later on you're going to be having a one-on-one to do an individual debrief, and that's when you'll be needing this information. So, your team is a mirror of yourself. This is a really great learning that I think every team leader should be very aware of. So this is, this kind of feedback is very important also for you, because you realize, okay, this is what I did well in managing my team. This is what I did well as a leader, and there's some things that I can improve on. So this is also actually very, very interesting for your own personal growth as a leader, not just for the people in your team. All right, so let's see, next up, individual debrief. So as I was saying before, you already are preparing some of this in your team debrief. So as a team leader, you obviously need to understand, how did your team members develop based on their individual needs and strengths? Obviously, we have this little nice thing called the LDA, the Leadership Development Assessment, that we have within EXPA. And we also have the very handy personal development plan. You guys have been working with Dunny for quite a long time, and PDP is a big thing that we're focusing on this semester. So you'll be hearing a lot about that. I'm certain you already have. So it's very important that your members realize actually how much they have achieved and how much they have developed. Why? Because when we start a team, when we're in the building phase, this is something that you promise your team members. You are responsible as a team leader to make sure that your team members get what you promise them from this experience. Yes, they will do a lot of work for you. They will learn about ISEC for you. That's all great. But what's really important for them also is to obviously be able to develop themselves. And so that's a responsibility you owe them. And so you need to make sure that at the end of your term, they actually can have time to reflect on what they've achieved and how they've developed, because this was a part of, the deal in going forward and working in this team. So when will you be having this individual debrief? Just like the team debrief, you will want to do this, kind of in the last 2 weeks of your term. Don't plan it too late because then you'll run out of time. One-on-ones take more time because you have to meet with everyone individually. But, where are you meeting? It's in a one-on-one. So this is between you and your individual team member. The individual debrief has two parts. First of all, the personal development plan review, and secondly, the final LDA, the leadership development assessment. So let's start off with the personal development plan review, the PDP review. So very important, you need a debrief, right? Based on the development of the leadership qualities of each member by the end of the experience. So you're tracking your members with the PDP for their personal growth and their personal kind of like, motivation in the team for your entire experience, right? For the entire team time. So it's very important to kind of come to a conclusion, like see, okay, where did we start at the beginning of the term? What were your goals? What were your dreams? Where are we now at the end of the term? So make sure you review the JD of each of your members to make sure that they realize, okay, this is, I actually achieved these things. We made some progress in my area in my JD. Same with performance and goal achievement of each individual. Now, you've already reviewed in your team debrief the performance and goal achievement overall, but now you want to look into specifically, okay, this is what this individual was responsible for. And this is really important for them because, people need to feel that, they obviously have an impact, and so if they actually reflect on, hey, this is, out of these many approves or, whatever you guys are working on, this is how many I did out of everything and everyone in our team. That's very, very meaningful to them because it makes everyone realize, hey, I actually do have an impact if I actually work. So that's a important learning that, everyone of us in ISEC should have. Next up, review feedbacks taken from the debrief that you did in your team. So this is, as I was saying before, in the team, you want to make sure that the feedbacks that you had within like your, development and things that went well in your team or didn't go well in your team, you want to review them with the individual because usually things were focused on one or two people, whatever, something like that. So you want to make sure that this individual also has time to like reflect on this specifically. And very important, next steps. So obviously, okay, if this team experience is done, that's great. There's a lot of other options in ISEC to move forward in. But there's also very important things like, finishing school, I don't know, about career plans, stuff like that. Maybe, in ISEC they realized, hey, I'm really interested in actually doing something else. So anything based on their performance and their kind of like how they've developed as a leader in this year, you're going to want to support setting up next steps for your members because you want to see them doing well in the future as well. This is, not limited to, but obviously easy to recommend is new and bigger leadership positions within ISEC. We love having a very good pipeline that's very healthy for ISEC in Ecuador, and we want to make sure that we have a very rewarding kind of leadership experience for everyone. So that's always a really good plan. Okay, part 2 of the individual debrief. Our final LDA, yay. So LDA, we all know, it's an expa. We all have to do it all the time, it seems like. But obviously the LDA is really important. It's one of the core kind of things that ISEC was built around like a couple years ago, right? Realizing, hey, ISEC actually develops very certain qualities within people, and like we want to be able to measure those because we want our people to realize, going through an ISEC experience, whatever that might be, we do LDA obviously for any exchange as well. So for going on an ISEC exchange or being in, in a team in ISEC, we want to make sure that people realize, okay, I've actually grown in these certain qualities that ISEC promised me I could grow, and that's very important. So number 1, reinforcing the importance of filling the LDA. Because obviously, if you don't fill it, you don't know what qualities you developed and how much. So it's very important, this is a personal thing. You can't fill it out for the member. You just have to remind them to go to Expo and do it. Very simple. And then checking the results of each member. So making sure that you actually have an understanding of How did your members grow in what area? Remember, the LDA is something that we offer for anyone who goes through ISEC, including everyone that goes on our exchange. And it's really important that, you know, we obviously live the ISEC experience, and working on a local level in a team or going on an ISEC experience. Again, you're still doing ISEC, therefore you should be developing qualities, and it's important to be very cognizant of that. So let's see, what's next? Last up in closing, is the transition. This is my personal favorite, maybe because I'm OD and the last like 3 months, this is all I've been worrying about. But let's look into transition. So this might be the most important thing of your term, actually. Fun fact. Why? So you want, you know, your legacy to be passed down, and you want your successor to bring to be more successful than you, ideally, because again, in ISEC, what do we want? Growth, correct? So that usually will happen within a term, but most importantly, the best growth is if it can pass through more than one term, because that's when we really have a healthy, sustainable area, team, LC, MC, right? So it's very important for you to provide a transition because you want your successor to learn from your successes, to learn from your failures, to know what to do or what not to do in his or her term. So yes, you know, obviously there's a new team starting when you're done, but you want to make sure that they don't have to start from zero. You want to make sure that they start from the foundation that you gave them. So what I like to think is a really good measurement of your leadership quality and your success in your term is actually how successful the team is in the next 6 months, okay? So in the next half of their term. Because if you did a really good job and you built foundations and you built things that are very sustainable and very healthy, and you've had routines that were very good, you're handing off an area that is healthy and is performing. And if you are able to transition that well, the next team should be able to continue on with that kind of performance and with that kind of health. So if you realize that, you know, they are more successful than you because they're building off the foundations that you set, they will, you know, be more successful in the next, you know, months into their term, and that will show you really clearly how good of a job you did as a team leader. So this is a great thing to reflect on for yourself personally as a team leader and for your area and for your team. Anyway, when do we do this? So we have transition as soon as the new team is elected. So the second they are elected, that's when transition starts. Where do we have transition? So we have transition meetings. This is obviously with the current and the elected team leader, and then of course the current and elected team members, right? So obviously you can't transition something if one or the other party isn't there. That wouldn't make any sense. And there's two parts to our transition. First of all, knowledge, very important. And part two is our resources. So starting off with knowledge. When should I focus on knowledge and skills transition? So like I was saying before, from the moment the team leader has been selected until the moment they officially start their term, when they have to start working and you're done. So usually transition, for example, in LCP will take about 3 meetings a week. For just team leaders, it'll be like 1 meeting a week. But again, this obviously depends on the skill set of the elected TL. Very important. It's important to make sure that you have your transition schedule well organized, okay? Like if you don't plan, oh, when are we going to have the meetings, you know, to transition? Well, guess what? They're never going to happen because you guys are super busy doing your actual, you know, current jobs, that you'll be too busy to worry about actually transitioning to the new job. So what should I focus on for transition? So first of all, we have logistical transition. So you have to provide all kinds of documents and tools that you used from your past term and give access to all the important platforms. I know, for example, all of us use the Google Drive. It's a real pain in the ass if some of the Google Drive documents are not shared or we can't find them, they're not well organized, it's very difficult. So the other important thing is you need to teach the person you're transitioning how to use them, right? So maybe you're using a tracker that is complicated and only you understand. Well, this person that you're transitioning is going to need to know how to use this tracker, right? And for many reasons. So it's very important you teach them how to use whatever you're transitioning them. Maybe have a little workshop with them or whatever. So an example for a logistical transition, for example, is like, as I was saying, Google Drive, the folders in your Google Drive, email logins, okay? So if you guys use like foundational emails or something like that, the Expa platform, etc., etc. So there's a lot of stuff. Now, biggest part, functional transition. Provide information about what was the plan, the done, the not done of your term, okay? So all of this information you're going to get from, you already have this prepared, right, in your team debrief that you did before. So you already know the results of your term. You need to present this to the people that you're transitioning to, right? They need to understand key achievements that you had, key learnings that you had, and most importantly, failures that you had, because that's what they can really learn from. So also, practical skills like having one-on-ones, functional team meetings, team days, stuff like that. It's very helpful for you to transition those, because that oftentimes is something that everyone is very uncomfortable doing because they've never practiced. But guess what? You only learn by doing. So it's really important that you kind of help them become comfortable with the new kind of responsibilities that come with being a team leader. So examples of this. You have trackers for analysis of all of your results in the term. You can make a SWOT analysis of your area, of your LC, something like that. Co-delivery works really well. What is co-delivery? That's if you and the person that's succeeding you, your successor, together plan and execute maybe a functional team meeting or an LCM or something like that, right? So they can kind of learn by watching you and by practicing themselves. Last up, team transition. So teach the current team the working routines you've had, the synergies you've had, stop, start, continue of your team practices. What maybe traditions do you have as a team, as an area? What is there to uphold in terms of culture? And obviously, most importantly, team standards implementation, right? If you are following the TL Academy, you're going to be experts on the TL and team standards implementation. So why is team transition so important? Well, first of all, it usually gets forgotten because it seems too complicated when actually it's not. But then the other thing is, where does the most time get lost in our ISEC year? The most difficult areas that we have to handle are usually related to poor team practices, okay? We don't have good routines. We don't do team standards. We have team fights. We aren't very aligned with what we're doing. We have problems within the team. These are all things that can be solved by making sure we have very good team standards, very good working routines, and you have to make sure that this is transitioned, of course, to the new TL that is taking over. So what is an example of this? Okay, maybe sharing stuff like, oh, there's a special team tradition. We always go, get beers after functional meetings or whatever. And then, yes, we have, what are our routines? Well, we have our functional meeting once every week at 8 p.m. And then we have a synergy every month with the advisor that we work with at school for our area or whatever, okay? So try to be obviously as specific as possible. And then the other thing that I would also recommend is a team transition is not as complicated as it seems. If you can manage to get the entire old team and the entire new team together in the same place at the same time and have it, the meeting very, very well organized, you can cover all of these things. It's mostly logistical, and make sure that everyone's really comfortable with, okay, what does it mean to be a team? What should we be following moving forward for our team building? Okay, lastly, resources in our transition. So I already touched upon this a little bit in this slide, in the knowledge slide for logistical transition, right? So resources are a huge logistical issue, right? It's your responsibility to identify which tools enable performance and which documents are very important for the area or the function that you're transitioning. So you have to compile the reports, okay? It can be on your computer, virtual copy. It can be all in a Google Drive folder. You can, if you have a hard copy of these things, print it out or whatever, give them a whole booklet. I don't know, I don't care, but they need to be somewhere. They need to be organized and they need to be together. So it's easy for someone else who doesn't, know your brain to understand how to use them. And also the tools, okay? So any tools that you've been using to track, to follow your planning, stuff like that, to keep track of contacts and leads and stuff like that, anything like that. Again, make sure it's in one space, easy to find, easy to organize. And, basically just make sure that while you're in these transition meetings that you're having, that you go over these tools, go over the reports, and explain to your successor how to use them, how to read them, what they mean. And oftentimes these reports serve basically as a resource, maybe to look back at. Maybe the new TL won't need them until 5 months into their term when they're in high peak and they need to realize, I need to look back at what we did last year for this because I'm really overwhelmed. It doesn't matter. The point is they just need to be aware that they have them and where they are. What kind of tools do we have? Well, logistical tools are obvious, right? We have the Google Drive folder. We have, maybe there's a spreadsheet that has all the logins and passwords for all of our platforms that we use in this area. There's an Expa space, right, for the new team. The new team has to be loaded into their team roles on Expa. Also, very important, UR, right? We have university responsibles that work with us, and guess what? They need to be transitioned too. They need to know that there's now going to be a new person working with them. So you have to manage transitioning the contacts of these people, okay? Functional tools. So we have obviously planning tools. We know this all too well. We have maybe a functional calendar with all the important events, a tracker. Maybe, we've been planning a lot of events and there's an outline for the event itineraries. Like, what are the things we need to bring to this event? How many people do we need? What's the timeline of a day that we have on this event? Stuff like that. Maybe it's budget for a certain function. Maybe it's like, ROI on something we invested specifically in this area and something that we want to maybe do again and for the new team. Always helpful is a SWOT of the whole area, right? Making sure we understand what are the strengths, the weaknesses, what are the threats and opportunities that this area has. Makes the new people coming into the team, the new team leader more aware, more self-aware. And maybe an overview of all the key gains, losses, and learnings. Honestly, the easiest way to do this is just make sure that when you do your team debrief kind of presentation, the report that we were talking about, the functional report and stuff, make sure it's done nicely in a way that you could just show this to your successor and they can keep it as a resource. Lastly, team tools. So is there a team standards tracking routine? I really hope there is. So make sure that that tool or however you track it is transitioned. You have a team calendar with all the routines that you have, the events that you had, how you track. This needs to be transitioned. Maybe you have team traditions, as we were talking about, or culture. Make sure there's a list and an explanation of them so you can keep them alive. And any important team management practices that you were doing. So maybe you were, covering a certain type of ICOM, and you have an ICOM schedule and a tracker for this. This kind of stuff is important as well. So yeah, that's basically it. That's the last part of transition. So if you guys have any questions, you can leave them in the comment section of our YouTube video, and I'll get back to you tomorrow when you're watching this. But other than that, again, I want you to remember that basically understanding where you want your team to be at the end of your team experience is really, really valuable for you as a team leader, because this can help you plan your whole building and your whole performing part of your team experience, okay? If you think of okay, well, I want to have a team building and want to make sure that, we really are clear in our job descriptions. We really, have time to bond, blah, 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 blah. Why? Because in the debrief, I want to make sure that I'm very aware of how my members grew. I want them to have the best experience possible. So being very aware of what you want your end goal to be with your team, what you want to be realizing, what you want to be learning about your team in the team closing, it's obviously important to be very, very aware of that so you can plan the rest of your year. So yeah, that's all from me, I think. Again, if you have any questions, I'll get to them tomorrow, and I hope you all have a great rest of your night or day if it's tomorrow when you're watching this. And thank you so much for your attention, and I hope you enjoyed this space of the Team Leaders Academy, and I hope you enjoy all the continuing spaces that we're going to be having tomorrow and the day after that. And that's all. Your MCVP OD checking out.